It's time now for Focus. Football has long been nicknamed the beautiful game, but it's a sport that's developed a more ugly side in recent years. Russia is currently hosting the FIFA Confederations Cup. That's an opportunity for the country to test its stadiums and also its security ahead of next year's World Cup. But away from the pitches, a growing number of Russian fans are turning to violence and hooliganism. Our Moscow bureau have been to meet some of those who prefer real kicks to free kicks.
In a Moscow suburb on the sidelines of the Confederations Cup, a third division match is about to start. At 20 years of age, Alexei's already under a stadium ban. He was handed a 3-year suspended sentence for a street fight between hooligans, but here he's still welcome. The home team's coach doesn't think the ultras are a security threat.
Behind the goalposts at the end, there's the area for supporters of the opposing team. Our boys are in Sector B, all the way on the left. That's the rule. That's what the inspectors watching over our matches demand.
Vadim Kots believes the ultras are even a key part of his team's success.
It's an indispensable part of football. We get bored without them. Thanks to them, we play better and we give all we've got. But you know, in reality, I can't remember the last time there was a fight during a match. They settle their scores with each other over there, outside the stands.
Those in the ultras stand today are barely 16 years old and are already dreaming of fighting and violence. But Alexei also hangs around the real, older hooligans. All the teams know each other, and most of the brawls are organised in advance.
We train 3 times a week in a gym. Sometimes we meet up in the forest. To do that, we agree on the number of people who are going to take part, and we fight until they tell us to stop. Kicks in the head, all that sort of thing. But if you're on the ground and you're really hurting and the fight is still going on, then your leader will come and put himself on top of you and they'll lay off.
We can't film the training and the fights because the leaders of these groups all asked us for money, spoilt by the attention of the world's media after the Euro 2016 championship. Last year in Marseille, around 150 Russian hooligans beat up English supporters, even though they were far outnumbered. A victory that's become the pride of Russian hooligans.
Here it says Tour de France, and there is the Queen of England, who undoubtedly suffered because of these mean Russian hooligans.
Dmitry took part in what happened in Marseille, but he's sure there won't be a follow-up at next year's World Cup.
Everyone has understood that it won't be possible in Russia. Security forces here started to work on the hooligans about a year before Marseille. Before each derby, before each big match, all the leaders who could organize fights are summoned to interviews or given a phone call. They're reminded of the risks they're taking. Everyone knows what a suspended sentence or jail time means in our country. You know you can wave goodbye to your job, your personal development, your career perspectives. Lawyers are expensive and you'll have financial problems. So they don't need to threaten us. They just say you're under control. Don't even think about it.
The authorities toughened up the anti-hooligan law 2 months ago. Stadium bans introduced last year now affect more than 300 people, and the list keeps on growing. The Moscow head of regional security confirms that leaders of the hooligans have been warned.
They complain to us, saying they're slipping down the international rankings of hooligans. But we tell them it's better to slip down the rankings than not to be able to go to the games. And to some extent, we understand each other.
So the hooligans have to keep their passion alive in other ways. This clothes shop in Moscow, created by and for hooligans, is easy to find on the internet.
This T-shirt is called Zoo Rope. It's our view of today's Europe. That's the photo of one of the migrants flooding the continent.
The owner says they have no problems with the authorities.
We've stopped bringing out T-shirts that could cause a backlash from the authorities. From this point on, we're more about bringing out T-shirts that are aggressive, but without incitement to do anything at all.
We meet a veteran of the hooligan world among the shop's customers.
My age doesn't allow me to do stupid things.
He tells us that today the movement has drastically changed from what it was in the 1990s.
In the 90s, you got whacked with metal bars and smacked in the face with bricks. We laid into each other with anything that came to hand. All that's finished now.
In short, civilization took hold.
Yeah, now it's a lot calmer.
Far from the chaos sparked in Marseille, hooliganism in Russia has become a trendy subculture more than anything else. But a trend under the watchful eye of the authorities.
Well, to delve a little deeper into this story, we can speak now to Sébastien Louis, an expert in football hooliganism, who joins us from Luxembourg. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24. First of all, can I ask you, have this kind of violent gang linked to football, have they been around for a long time in Russia, and how have they evolved?
Yeah, it's a long time that there is football violence in Russia. There is 3 steps of different violence in Russia. The first steps is during the 80s under the Soviet regime, where there was already football incidents, troubles on the stadiums, and it was not so organized. There were some gangs who were rally, but just at the stadium, and at the time they couldn't connect because there was not the instrument that they had after. In the 90s, we have the second generation of football hooligan in Russia, which are more prepared, looking to the Western. They are organized, they have a name, they rally already outside of the stadium, they try to organize, and they are prepared to fight. And now we have the third generation, which starts after the year 2000, which is a very connected generation. They do free fight. It means they don't clash anymore in the stadium like in the 80s or 90s. Until the start of 2000, it was very easy to clash inside the stadium, and even until 2010. But they decided to go outside of the stadium. Why outside of the stadium? Because it was more easy to have an appointment far away from police, far away from any kind of arrest, far away from CCTV. And they decided to arrange like 20 against 20, 30 against 30, sometimes 100 against 100. They have a different T-shirt colors, they are prepared, and they do a free fight, as they said, which is normally around 1 or 2 minutes.
You've also been looking very carefully at the nature of hooliganism in Italy. How does this Russian variant differ from the violent gangs found in other countries, be it in Europe or elsewhere?
First of all, we mix a bit 2 words, and which are 2 different subculture of football fandom. The first one are ultras, which are in Italy, and hooligans, which are more common in Russia. But we have ultras also in Russia. The hooligans, they decide the main purpose is to fight against the other gangs. The ultras, they create animation on the terrace, they sing, they do display, and sometimes they fight. This is the first thing. What is the difference? In Russia, the hooligans are very well organized. As I said, all the week they prepare, they train, they do some martial art, and they are ready to fight. They arrange themselves. In Italy, one of the leaders of the Ultras of Catania told me that he really didn't like this free fight because to go in a wood to fight, for him it was useless. The good thing of fighting between Ultras in Italy, he told me, was to have the surprise that the other attacked you. In fact, in Russia, everything is very well organized, everything is under a code. And as I said, and we saw it in Marseille last year, they are very well prepared, like a commando who are ready to fight. And in fact, they defeated the English, who were much more in a higher number.
Mr. Louis, in your view, how damaging is hooliganism to the image of football as a game internationally?
It's a very good question. You know, hooliganism has already now more than 50 years. The real organization of hooligans starts in England during the season 66-67. So now we are half century of hooliganism. Hooliganism damaged a lot football, and we all remember the dramatic image of the Ezel in '85 in Brussels, where 39 football fans die, not because of the fight, but because of the bad organization and of the attack, of the aggressivity of English hooligans. Italian fans were afraid and tried to go outside of the stadium. This was the point. The 80s was the worst of hooliganism in all Europe. Now we have a different hooliganism. We have very few people who die of hooliganism. There is still time to time, but very few. But it's a very different hooliganism, which is, we can say, a contemporary hooliganism. We use social media, we use internet. You have a lot of forum on internet and you know what happened in the world. If there is a brawl in Indonesia, 2 hours after you have some image, you have some footage on internet. So there is this dark world which still exists. There are less numbered, and it's more outside of the stadium.
And very, very briefly, in your view, are Russian authorities doing enough to stamp out hooliganism ahead of the World Cup?
They will do a lot, for sure, because it will damage the image of the country. When it happened in Marseille, we all remember there was this polemic between the Russian authority and the French authority and the international authority, English authority, to say, look, it's unbelievable. Even Putin was speaking like, how can 100 Russians can defeat thousands of English fans? So for sure, the Russian authority will try to do everything that there is nothing which happened, but we are in Russia. It will be hard to control every single group of hooligans. And if we have big nations who have huge number of hooligans like Poland, Hungary, Belarus, who will go to the World Cup, I think there could be some trouble for sure. It's very hard to avoid any kind of trouble.
Sébastien Louis, an expert in football hooliganism, thank you very much for joining us here on France 24.